Welcome to the Healthcare Business Secrets Show, where we interview industry leaders and break down exactly how they're dominating their markets so you can learn from the best and can double your revenue, double your impact, and double your time off. In this episode, we're talking with Gabby Reece. Gabby is an inspiring leader, spokeswoman, New York Times best-selling author, and American professional volleyball. As an author and speaker, Gabby published her book, My Foot is Too Big for the Glass Slipper, in 2013, making it a New York Times bestseller and attending TEDMed's famous annual conference in 2012 to discuss innovations in health and medicine. She's currently has her own podcast called The Gabby Reece Show, where she talks with people from all walks of life and specialties based on their experiences, successes, and failures to help people reach the highest point of personal success. Welcome to the show, Gabby.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you on. And what I want to do first is get you to kind of give our audience some background on you. Where have you come from? And sort of touch on some of the stuff that you've achieved too, because I think it'd be awesome to have some context. And then also what you're working on now.
Okay, well, I sort of had I think everyone's had an unusual childhood. I was raised between New York and then most of my years in the Caribbean, and I ended up going to university on an athletic scholarship, which was not. Let me just say this: I never thought about going to college. I was not a person who was. I always felt like I was, smart enough, but I wasn't really. I wanted to like get out and work, and I sort of do it that way, where you know people who are sort of really, they use the line of education, which I think is great as well. But that wasn't the way I was, and I found myself at university and playing volleyball, and simultaneously to that, because I was taking care of myself beyond my scholarship, I ended up started modeling simultaneously. So I was also traveling quite a bit. And I think that this part is important only for the fact that it also taught me about presentation. When you're modeling, as silly as it sounds, it's like, well, who's shooting it? Who's doing your hair and makeup? Because what you start to realize is also who's around you will impact how you look. And I don't mean just physically look. And so I learned that at 18. And then after school, I didn't want to just be in fashion. And I moved to Miami, and I picked up the beach game, which I had not played prior to that. And after about a year of being there, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should move to California and play professionally." And I was like, okay, that's sometimes the good part of not knowing better. And so I moved to California and I started playing professional beach volleyball. I was drafted in 1992. And, a lot of things happened in that space of time. I signed a Nike contract. I was actually given my own signature shoe. And this is where I use my experience because I was in such a tiny sport. Beach volleyball is a very, very small lifestyle sport. So for example, if I had the opportunity to be seen, whether it was be interviewed or have pictures in a magazine back in the days when, it's like you were in magazines still and things like that. I was very strategic about the way I would be seen, because I understood that if they're only going to see me once in a blue moon, it wasn't like American football or the NBA where you're on TV every week, that I needed to maximize those small opportunities. And also simultaneously, I did pursue other things that interested me, but also I knew the doors that would open for me because I was in professional sports. So television and, writing columns for magazines. So it was other ways to connect with people, not just being the talent, so to speak, in front, which has its own limitations, but also being behind, interviewing other people, writing, connecting with people in that format. And also, I think I did it because I understood the limitation of the platform I was on. The sport I was on was so small. And I think, since we're talking about business and growing business, the reason I bring that up is because I think it's really important to understand what you're in. Just because you love it and you think it's so important and you spend 90% of your lion's share doing it, doesn't actually mean that translates out into the marketplace. It's not about, oh, it's fair, it's not fair. It's just knowing what is, so you can navigate what you're doing, based in reality, and then also understanding, well, what is the best strategy? So for me, I was always really aware, like, hey, beach volleyball, it has a lot of limits. So people could see me on MTV Sports for 7 minutes, and that would impact my career times 500 versus, 8 tournaments in a couple of months that, you know what I mean? Like so it was just really getting informed. And from there, I did other things. I met my husband, who's a surfer, Laird Hamilton, in 1995, and talk about another small sport, big wave surfing. What do you do? What is it? So then it became about storytelling, education. And then from there, we would do other lifestyle brands based on some of the stuff that we were learning and doing, because we had all this great input from, you know, other really like incredible experts, whether it was in movement or nutrition, or even when I say self-care, I mean the spiritual aspects of self-care and the daily practice of self-care. And so we started other businesses that, you know, they weren't the right time, or we weren't focused correctly, or what have you. And you know, it kind of brings me up to now, which is we have 3 daughters. We have one business called XPT, which is a training business. There's a breathe, move, and recover. You know, there's a pool element. We do a lot of heat and ice. And actually, the reason I had to cancel our interview the last time is we have a superfoods company, and we actually just took that public. So that's an example of like the best case scenario that certainly we've ever experienced. But I would like to say that, you know, you have to go through all of those other processes to get that education. And people will say, oh, it's failures. I don't know if it's failures now. I think it's like school. So you go through that and you learn about the importance of your culture, your corporate culture. Like you don't think about that when you're starting out. You think about, if people aren't understanding my ideas, well, those aren't your people. And so it's just kind of learning a lot of those lessons that has gotten me to here. And I live between California and Hawaii. My husband is still pursuing large waves, which I'm always fascinated at his intensity. But what I like about it is that I draft behind him, and you know, use that to stay open-minded. That's part of the reason I love the podcast. I can keep learning and putting myself out there and seeing it differently, because it's so easy, especially if you even have a little bit of success, and maybe some of your listeners experience this, to lock in and be like, oh, this is how I do it. And I think that that's a really easy and comfortable way, but it also ends up biting you pretty badly in the butt, because we have to keep adapting and growing with the way that the world is, and seeing how our skill sets fit in today, not 10 years ago, and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. You touched on a few things, and I want to kind of back up a little bit. What I found really interesting was that you used your skills, right, and your authority in your niche, and you leveraged it to build profile, because you understood that profile is ultimately the end game, because the sports career will run out and I need to go somewhere, right? And I think that we can relate that to the healthcare industry in terms of, we have skills, we have authority, we're good at stuff, we know things, and people need it. And we should be leveraging more of that to create our own profile. There's examples of this, right? All the doctors in the world, Dr. Axe and Phil and Oz and all of that, they've done that in their respective fields. And what they've done is they haven't said, I have to be the best in the world. What they've said is, I know more than the person I'm talking to. And this is obviously simplification, but I know more than the person I'm talking to. So how about I just go and reach all of those people? So instead of trying to be the best and being super vertical, and I talk about this all the time, there's heaps of broke experts. And there's a major difference between being an expert and an authority. You don't have to have the alphabet after your name to prove yourself in the vertical, because the reason people do that is they're trying to push up against everyone else in their profession and around them to show that there's something. But that's hard work. You're better off just being, labor and metaphor here, being a fluid. Instead of trying to push up, just go out around the sides. Because guess what? You can get around that pressure, because that pressure feels like it's everywhere. Everyone's looking at you, your profession, etc. And I felt that. Now that I'm not practicing anymore, I realized how small and significant and like a pebble that was on me, because I could have just moved to the side like I've done. And now I'm free of it. And I'm leveraging my authority and my skills and my knowledge to build profile. So I love that. I love what you said about that, because too many of us are not doing that properly. It doesn't have to be on a giant macro scale. Like it could be in your community, in a small circle, in a small thing. And as long as you're consistent with it, and this is what I've found, right? if you think too big with it, suddenly you have all these big problems that don't exist yet, and you're trying to combat things and keeps you down, versus actually just going, well, how do I stay small and navigate these things? And through doing that, it just develops. If I look at where I am now compared to where I was 18 months ago, it's ridiculously different. But had I, at the time, it felt like this insurmountable mountain to climb. And now I'm looking at it going, well, that was relatively easy. But looking at my next goal, I go, oh, that's too big. And I'm realizing that I'm playing too big, too quick, and over, what is it? I think it's Bill Gates said it, right? Like, people overestimate how much they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. And this is especially common for us as health professionals. We have knowledge and skills, but we compare ourselves to the experts in our profession and think that we don't, whereas the average person needs us. And by us not getting our voice out there, it affects them, but also it affects us. Talk to me a bit about what you did to see opportunity to build leverage and profile. Was it kind of innate? Did you have to plan and think about it? Or did you just kind of inherently know, hey, I need to position myself in these places, and when I'm on TV, I need to make the most of it, or whatever? Or was it like a strategic? Yeah. Talk to me a bit about that, because a lot of people will probably be asking that. How do I actually build profile like Josh Axe did?
I think there's some interesting ideas around this, which for me, I think I did naturally because I didn't have the internet. So I only have my own voice and my own instincts, which at times, especially when you're building something, I think is really important, because no matter what, let's say you're not the best in your field, but you're still the only one of you. And it's always important to try to push away the temptation to imitate or mimic the way someone else that's having success is doing it. So I didn't have that picture in front of me, which probably helped me. All I did was that I took every opportunity and said, okay, I will create value. I will be articulate. I will be professional. And I'm talking as a 19 and 20-year-old person. I will be genuine, because that's the other thing. You don't want to have a shtick. You don't want to, yes, is it the best of me? Like sitting here talking to you, is this how I talk to my girlfriend in the car? No. But is it the better side of who I really am? It is, because the other thing is, you don't want to reek of being a performer. And especially you're talking about healthcare and medical, you want to seem as genuine as you really are if I came to visit you in your practice. I think too slick is a problem. If I'm in the business where slick is acceptable, like if you're a guy who's like, you want to make more money, maybe, okay, maybe that audience is going to believe that. For me, it was always, I was going to be really a version of who I am at all times. I will express my imperfections and foibles. So it was always a combination. And also I didn't present something that was disingenuine. And also I would look at the landscape and say, is there anything out there that feels like such a right fit for me, that I would like to try to go to pursue that. And I think that's another thing, is also, this is where the strategy does come in, where especially, you develop your skill set in communicating. You kind of understand your voice, which doesn't mean your voice can't change, because as you learn, you change and your point of view changes, but just that you sort of find that rhythm, and then maybe start to look at the landscape and say, well, where do I fit and what feels good to me, and go ahead and pursue it. And that's the other thing I've always done. Even to this day, I have no agents or managers. About 8-9 years ago, I went, everything I have to do is strategic. And you'll find sometimes when people help you, it's transactional. So I have a really good attorney, and if I want to make something, I put together the group who can help me create the deck, or, is it a sizzle reel? If I want to talk to somebody, I call them, because I think sometimes we all think we're so important, or, if we show that we're available, that somehow we're giving out our power. No, what you're saying is, I want to do the work. And at the end of the day, the work, if you want to take on the work, then you will. I've been doing this job for 32 years, and it's not because I'm a genius, and it's not because I'm 20 anymore. It's because I'm always willing to do the work, and I'm not trying to forego the temptation to keep repeating what you're known for over and over, but to keep moving forward, because then you'll always have that expansion. And something you said I think is really important. If I'm Dr. Phil, I can amplify. If I know who's the most badass guy in PTSD or whatever, brain recovery, I can amplify his message. So it's also important to know that you can still really have this sharp end of the stick impact when you feel like it's necessary, by just simply inviting people that are so very good at what they do and amplifying their message. And not to be afraid of that, right? Like, to be like, in my practice, I was good to hear, but in this space, these guys are, you know, off the charts.
Yeah. You made a really good point about audience perception, right? And being authentic. I think that's super important. I think that people forget that they see these characters, and I've spoken about this before. You know, people see these characters and they think, well, that's how they are, and we want to model them because we know that modeling works. But modeling in what they're doing, not necessarily how they're being, because if you're not maintaining an authentic persona of yourself, like you said, who you are with your partner, with your friends, with your kids is different. And we all have these roles, but they're not inauthentic because you can't sustain things that are inauthentic and people can see through it. And then this is why people try things and then don't like it, because they're being something that they're not and they can't sustain that energy, right? So a really awesome example of this was I had Ken Berry on the show, and he's got something like 1.2 million YouTube subscribers. He's a doctor, and he just makes these videos. And I love it. And I've mentioned this before because I think it's absolutely brilliant. And this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Most people get the lab coat on, or they try and be this thing and they do these videos and they try and make it fancy. He just gets a webcam, his AirPods, and he's wearing a shirt and he just does a video in his office. And it's like, this is just me being me. And his kind of point was, I want to do it like someone would see me in my office. And that's why there's been so much success. And I mention this because this is the epitome of just getting your phone and just being basic, just doing stuff. And a lot of us, we worry about videos, we worry about podcasts, we worry about what we're doing and who we're being interviewed and what we're saying, because we're trying to be perfect. And that's, especially in today's day and age, that's not what people want. That's also not what they need. Now, there's an element of who your audience needs you to be. Like, my audience needs to know that I'm successful, because you don't want to have a broke business coach, right? Because you're kind of looking at it like, well, maybe they did some stuff in the past, but is it relevant now because they're broke? Just like you don't want an overweight, unfit personal trainer, right? But at the same time, you don't want a personal trainer who's always wearing no shirt, flexing all the time, looking himself in the mirror. You might look like that on Instagram, but then you want a real person as well. And same thing with, you know, a business coach. You don't want them necessarily sitting on Lamborghinis all the time, pretending to be on, you know, private planes, because that's, you know, that's not authentic. Some people will identify with that. That's why there are people doing that and it works. But if that's not you, don't do it. If it is you, go nuts, right? It works for people. But if it's not you, that's the key.
Well, I think what you said is it. Anything that really is the person, whoever their audience is, they will respond. And that's a real thing. And by the way, it's harder and scarier to be yourself, because we never think, is this good enough? Was that smart enough? Was that interesting enough? Did I create enough value? But you know what? Sometimes it's not about that. And I even was talking to a friend of mine about that when I do my podcast, where let's say I do an interview, and you've had this in your own experience. Once in a while, you get a conversation that's like, it's okay. But you have those conversations so you can have the other ones too. And that is also part of the deal. And that's, so if you're in business, failure, I didn't show up, my presentation wasn't so great, they weren't interested in me, whatever it is, that's just all part of the whole thing.
People don't talk about the losses later. Like, an interesting example, and I don't want to get into politics, but look at who the president of the US is, and some of the stuff that's been said, whether you like him or not. Some of it is outrageous, but no one's kind of really talks about it and necessarily cares, except for a small group. And you would kind of just move on and carry on with life. And so if someone who's at the top, so to speak, and is in the massive public eye, is having failings just like anyone, and says certain things and is a bit outrageous with it, imagine you being essentially a nobody, right? You're not on the world stage, and you're worried about your failures, and you're worried about you not being perfect and perceived perfect. I think that's a reminder that we're all people, and that's part of the process. And that in the moment you can say something weird, or you can look strange. Like, you don't know what my hair was supposed to look like You know what I mean? So how would you know if it's good or not?
Right.
But I do, and I worry about it. But I think that I've realized that it's about doing it for me. I'm doing this for me, not for you. And because I know that there's value in it and that someone's going to experience value. And that's like the very basic. The next level up for me is like, I'm doing it for me and my ideal client, the person that I talk to every day, Dave, Stacy, John, whoever, and I'm visualizing them and I'm creating the resource I'm being interviewed for, and I'm answering questions for that person to get value. Whenever I'm doing this, I'm thinking about that person, because guess what? There's going to be 50 million of those people, and I don't need to be speaking to everyone. I just need to be me. And kind of to our point before about being a bit outlandish, Grant Cardone is an amazing example of this, right? He is the guy who's on the planes and doing the things and blah, 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 but he's sustaining it because it's him. And so it works. The next person who comes along and tries to do it, you can see through it because the energy's not there. And it's this authenticity where we kind of get it wrong, I think. Yeah. And in healthcare, the problem is we worry as well, like we're doctors, I can't be doing this, I can't be saying this. But that's where there's the opportunity, I think, too, is that too many people are scared.
Very well, because you will get criticized and people have the freedom to comment. But remember, the agreement in which we've made and how people consume content, to your point, it's messy. And that's why they'll keep coming back. You better know your stuff enough times that you show up that it's like, oh, it's just not all, all sizzle and no steak. But they don't mind if it's messy. They kind of prefer it.
100%. We've gone, I think, gone are the days of where we worry about production crews and everything like that, because people just want to get, because there's too many people producing stuff that you don't know if you can trust. And so they're looking for the authentic, because then it's real. It's an actual person, not an actor, not a made up thing. I get that with images that I use in my ads, for example. Everyone tries to see perfect photos and they don't work. My clients' ads don't work. And I said, that's because it looks like a stock photo. And they said, it's not a stock photo. I said, yes, but it looks like it because it's too good. How about you just get your phone out and do a selfie? And like, oh, the lighting's bad. I'm like, yeah, perfect. Because now people know that you're real. And it's really interesting. I want to pivot here. You talked about using your authority and creating leverage and building public awareness and persona and things like that. And then pivoting in business, I think, is an important part. Often we get, especially in healthcare, we get down this tunnel of like, this is all I do. Like in my case, I'm a chiropractor. And how could I study for 5 years and work for 5 years and then just stop? Because, I spend all this time and money and whatever. But we know that it's not aligning with where we ultimately want to get to. And I think that we need to be, a flag in the wind and be willing to pivot around. And you did that amazingly. How did you go from doing what you're doing to pivoting into things like programs and products and supplement lines and all that sort of stuff? I think a lot of us think about it all the time, especially me. I've seen stuff and I went, that's a bad product and there isn't a good one. And I would like to do something because I know what I'm talking about, but where the hell do I start? How did you pivot into that sort of thing?
Well, I made some mistakes along the way because I tried. And then, for example, Laird and I had a company, a nutrition company, that we made products that we had been using for over 10 years that we loved, greens and things like that. It was a half-baked deal. And so here's the other thing though, and this is like the nasty grown-up side of things. I would do things, and as I was building my career, and people will say things like, well, it'll be good exposure for you. And in the beginning, when you're paying your dues or you're like, rookie, yes, there's something to be said for that because you're getting training and you're learning and you're doing this. But then there comes a point where you go, cool, so I have this exposure. How do I monetize that? And it's just the big simple thing, because, for me, when people say, oh, well, so many people see it or whatever, the idea of thinking that being known for anything and thinking that that's sustainable or that will bring you some kind of professional or personal satisfaction is ridiculous. It's knowing that this is a job. You're just fortunate that maybe your job's a little more kind of fun, creative, and weird than other people who are maybe were going to an office. Don't take yourself so serious, but be strategic. Cool. If I do this thing over here that gets me exposure on the back end, how do I monetize that authentically? And quite frankly, sometimes we have to bomb it a few times. XPT came out of my very close friend, Jennifer, who had worked with us, who I played volleyball with, said, you've got to figure out a way to put this together and teach people. And then we're going to do these experiences and they're going to show up for 2.5 days. I go, I don't want people to pay a ton of money to hang out and show up with hang out with us for 2.5 days. how can we make that valuable to them? And so that happened. Then you flush through it, you tweak it, you tweak it, you tweak it. And then with our superfood company, for example, this was off of a real habit that my husband did for over 20 years. Somebody was getting his coffee drinks and they were like, can I try to make this into some kind of powder? And we're like, yeah, sure. And, that's the company we just took public, and it's 5 years old. So these are examples of being willing to go take a swing at it. I don't know what's the relevant, in baseball in America, cricket, like being willing, if it feels real to you, not like, well, everybody's doing it. Because by the way, anytime you do something that everybody's doing, it's already too late. And also if you have something special and it's already not a flooded zone, because you want to be careful not to think you're going to be the most spectacular person in a crowded landscape, go for it, but sometimes with entrepreneurs, which is a version of what you guys are doing, because you're taking one form of your discipline and turning it into another. That is the form of entrepreneurship. They're sort of thinking, well, I don't know how. I believe if you're clear with your why and you are always looking at the landscape and trying to be less emotional, passionate, but not emotional, and strategic, the stuff's going to open up and you're going to find it, and it's going to find you. It just is. So passion is important. Emotion can get a little tricky.
It's I think you said it right. Your why is extremely important. People who are successful have a why beyond just what they're doing, and that's why they keep doing it, because it becomes purpose. And when you've got purpose, you find solutions. If your kid is in a burning building, you'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Because it's not like, oh, it's too hard, I'd rather watch Netflix, because your kid's going to die. And I'm acutely aware of that. I have one who's little and another one on the way. And I'm realizing more and more that I need to look at my life and my businesses and everything I do like I would with my kids and go, what's my why? Because having that, your brain's a powerful thing, but you're only consciously aware of a small part of it. And I think that when you become absolutely obsessed and focused on the outcome, the solution finds itself. Whereas if you're looking for the solution or the strategy, I think you miss the boat, because you don't just keep going no matter what. Like, I wanted to build an online business that didn't require me to spend hours, and I could do things creatively. And so I just did it. And people ask me how. I said, well, I don't know. I just did it. How did you get to this point? Well, I looked it up a lot of stuff and I found out a lot of information and I put pieces together and I made it work, because I was obsessed with getting the outcome. So guess what? I was on the internet, I was connecting with people, I was doing all this stuff, and it just kind of put it together. And so my advice for people who are thinking about, do I want to get to pivoting my business, right? And you said it as an entrepreneur, you are constantly looking at, how do I solve problems and monetize? And in a job, it's like, how do I get paid? You're still trying to get paid as an entrepreneur, but it's like solving problems to get paid rather than just kind of sitting on my ass and getting paid. And the big thing that I teach my health professionals, my clients, is how do I go from a hustle and a practice to a business? Because health professionals get stuck in practices where it's really just a fancy job without paid holidays and paid sick leave and stuff like that. It feels like you've got control, but you don't, because you can't go on holiday. And I know what that's personally like. And a business is where it's running, it's an entity, it's living, it's doing its thing, and you're guiding it. And we need to transition that. We need to use our skills to transition that.
Well, and I think what's a very harsh reality is, unless somehow your hours are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, if we do something that takes our real hours, there's a serious limitation with that. So it is being aware of, well, what can exist when I'm sleeping or I'm on holiday? What can work for me? Because I really believe in this, because the other thing that starts to happen is people will be busy and make things hard, actually as an excuse or an escape from something else. The idea of going, oh no, I'm going to live my real life. And like my husband always jokes, if anyone's going to waste my time, it's going to be me, meaning him. But not being afraid. Like, we're all afraid actually to slow down, right? Like, we're all afraid to be like, oh, I'm quiet. Oh, what are you going to do? I'm going to be with my kids. A lot of us would rather bury ourselves in our work, but also understand whatever you can make in 8 to 12 hours and produce yourself, you're always going to have a limitation.
It's a false like, I know exactly what you're talking about. We tend to feel this false fulfillment from the work we're doing as a way of pretending like we're happy because we don't know what else to do with ourselves. And you see it with people when they go on holiday and they can't handle it. It's like, I'm going to read books. I'm going to relax. What are you going to do with your time? And so many people that I've talked to, friends, family, they just don't get it because they're so used to, and it's been, I think it's a societal thing, right? Like, I don't want to get too deep on it, but we're
but it's true.
into it, you know?
We place value on that. And also it's identity. What do you do? Oh, I do this. And really, if you want to be, I think the most successful people, it's like, and when I say successful, right, I'm not just talking about the bank account, followers, patience. I'm talking about, a sense of peace. I don't even bother with the word happiness, the sense of stillness, because that you could go somewhere and it wouldn't matter to you if somebody knew what you did or how much money you had. For me, this is really kick-ass success, even if you have it, where it's like, no, that is also part of me, but it's part, my husband, he's like, listen, I surf, I'm not a surfer. And I think the more also we can incorporate these things, because then, so we don't hide in it. And the other thing is, when you're really living as a real person, the growth continues. So now, if you want to talk about how to positively impact your business, be living a life. So you're changing and growing and learning, and then knowing where the next places you're going to move. You're going to be like water, just naturally going to these places instead of looking up one day after 15 years.
Yeah, well, I think we get scared with how much control we actually have over the destination we end up at, because it's easier to just be told, which is why most of us will want an authority. We get upset about politics, as an example. We get upset about who's there, but then we won't go and vote, or we get upset about how things are going, but then we don't actually try and make any change. And we do it in our own lives as well, constantly. I'm unhappy with my body. Stop eating like crap and start exercising. Well, it's too hard. Well, yes, it's hard to not have what you want, and it's hard to get what you want. Pick your hard. And I've become a huge advocate of that, and realizing that I am the only one that's in control of my outcomes. And you can very much make yourself busy as an excuse to avoid stuff.
Yes.
I can't deal with this. I can't do that because I'm busy. And practitioners do this all the time. I can't do that, James, because I'm too busy. I'm like, well, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Say it right. It's bullshit. Not busy. You're doing stuff that you shouldn't be. But I need to be. No, you don't. You can get someone else to. You can make a system. I don't have time to make a system. Well, do you have time to not sort this out? Because it's going to be a slow burn, death by 1,000 cuts. And you're going to pay for it more in the future. But I think that comes down to how people like to deal with pain. I think most of us are comfortable slowly, ripping a Band-Aid off and suffering for longer over a smaller amount over a longer period of time, and collectively having more suffering than to rip it off and heal it, and then you're good to go. And those of us who can do that, I think, are the ones that win in whatever it is, because we're ready to take actions now that produce long-term, we'll take the pain to get the long-term gain, rather than avoiding a lot of that immediate pain, but also actually avoiding missing out on the win long term, right? We're no good at managing that future stuff.
I've heard from very reputable sources that a good indication for mental health is a high tolerance for ambiguity and a flexible psychology. So I think that falls into line of what you're saying, because, life is always changing. And this from being in self-care, the number one thing I could ever be as an organism is something that's adapting all the time. And the only way to do that is to be living in real time and not forcing yourself into these constructs. Because then we miss all the growth too. Like, that's the thing, the next horizon, that's all showing up when we're really participating and not hiding in these kind of like rigid schedules that we create.
Yeah. This is so good. I could go on forever on this topic. I'm conscious of time. I'm conscious of your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been an amazing, insightful episode. And I hope that everyone's kind of really listens to what we're talking about, because there's a whole lot of value here. Where can our audience connect with you online?
I'm mostly, I mean, I have Facebook and Instagram, Gabby Reece, and my podcast, The Gabby Reece Show. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
You have a lovely rest of your day.
And you too. Congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Awesome. That was good. That was really good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Of course.
I'd love to be on your show if that's an opportunity. I think that we'd have some
Absolutely.
really good deep chats, to be honest.
Absolutely. I go a lot longer than you do, though. I'm not as respectful of your time.
That's okay with me. If you're okay with that, I have my team reach out and maybe we can chat and organize something.
Yeah, please do, because and just know we're going to talk about the work stuff, but we're going to talk about the babies and we're going to talk about relationships, because my whole thing is if you really want to be a high performance organism, how not you, just the collective. I'm interested in people who are really good at what they're doing, and how are they taking those lessons and bringing it into the everyday, because it is the hardest, right? You're not getting your young child, you're not controlling them. You're like, please, could you go to sleep? You know, it's like, so it's, for me, it's like, I almost felt like I could fake it through volleyball. Like, yeah, okay, no problem. But you can't phone in the real life stuff. And if you're really trying to do it, and it's always changing, what does that look like? And so those are the conversations that I'm really interested in, because then also people realize, like, you know, most people are navigating at different phases, messy lives and within that, that's actually the beauty. Like, it's not perfect. It's like, woo, you know.
I had a brand new baby. I was a doctor running a clinic with associates, and I was building a big coaching business, and I was up at 4 a.m. because the US time zones meant I had to be to do sales calls. And I was managing all of this because I knew what I wanted to go for. And it was like, I knew I had to. So I'm 100% with that. Me and my wife are very focused on kind of aware parenting and just being switched on in general about self-awareness of ourselves and the impact of all those things. And so I think I'd love to talk about this. I love that stuff. I could talk about it for hours. So the business stuff is good, but all of that kind of thing is super important.
I want to talk about the business stuff too, because I think it's important, and we're at a time more than ever that people really need to be thinking about being entrepreneurs and what does that look like. So I really appreciate that you're putting that out there.
Awesome. What I'll say is, with the show, I'll send you the files so that you can cut it up, and if you use it, if you want to in your own social, I'd really appreciate it if you'd promote the episode as well.
I will.
We have a funnel set up for you, so people who come through it, they get tagged as you. So if anyone becomes a client, we throw you some checks as a thank you.
No, don't throw me checks. Do it. You can do my checks to charity, whatever charity you like.
Okay, I appreciate that. We'll definitely do that, and but I'll let you know at least when they do. And I really appreciate you. I'm going to make sure I'm following all your stuff. Check out your podcast, and we'll speak soon.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye. Actually, the guy I have on this week, Brett Bartholomew, he has a conscious coaching. He's really into communication. You'd appreciate him too.
Yeah, I'll check him out.
He's badass. Smart guy.
Awesome. You take care. See you later.
Aloha. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the show. If you liked the episode, please hit subscribe and leave us a review. I'd really appreciate it, as it helps us get our episodes out to more people just like you who want to know how to increase their revenue, impact more people, and build businesses that work for the lifestyle they want. Now, I know your time is valuable, and I know that you are here to learn the secrets to success in your health business, so I have something special for you just for checking out the episode. Now, if you're a health professional, coach, or trainer in business, and you're serious about growing a profitable, impactful business, then pay attention, because as a listener of the show, I want you to win. And so I've created a host of resources available exclusively for listeners of the show. So if you're tired of trying to figure out this game of business, marketing, and sales all on your own, and you're ready to just implement what's already proven to work rather than reinventing the wheel, I want you right now to go and check out healthcarebusinesssecrets.com/insider, and there you will find over $5,000 worth of trainings, resources, and coaching available only for listeners of the show. There I'll give you the resources on everything from how to acquire 10 times more of your ideal clients using social media and paid ads, even referrals, how to increase your client conversion into packages at an 80 to 90% conversion rate like me, how to retain your clients for longer, getting them better results and making them happier, how to increase your prices and charge a premium to work with you, and how you can build a 6, multi-6, even 7-figure practice just like I did, but with 1/10 of the time and 1/10 of the effort. What I want you to realize is that everything I teach comes from exactly what I did to have success and still have success in my own health business, and I want to share that with you so you can have success too. So go check out healthcarebusinesssecrets.com/insider right now and let me help you win big in your health business. Also remember to subscribe for 2 episodes every week full of the secrets to have success in your health business, as well as leave us a review so we know what you thought of the show. And I'll see you on the next episode.